Okay, so today we are going to discuss a solution for a problem that you may run into on, well, particularly on Windows 11 computers, and that is Windows Update has a tendency to think that it's smarter than you in terms of when restarts of your system should happen. Now, under normal circumstances, maybe that's not such a big deal. But if you ever use your computer in a scenario where you need to leave something open overnight, or you have some kind of a process that runs a long time that needs to run continuously for an extended period of time, you would think that, okay, so like Windows has a sleep function, right? And the computer will get put to sleep when it's idle. You would think that the Windows Update reboot would work kind of like that, where it would determine, okay, so the computer is not in use, and it doesn't have any unsaved documents open or something like that. So now is a safe time to go ahead and reboot. But no, it doesn't do that. It will do it. It doesn't matter what's going on the computer. When Windows has decided it's time to reboot, it will just reboot. And so you'll have left something maybe overnight to run. You come in the next morning expecting it's finished, and you're at your login screen. The computer has been rebooted. And your work was lost, or you have to start over, or whatever. So I found this really frustrating because I use my computer in that way sometimes, where I need something to run overnight or for a long period of time. And I would like to be able to tell the computer to just, hey, back off. I want to reboot when I want to reboot. You know? So there's a couple ways that people approach this. The one way, and you'll see this out there if you Google for solutions on this, is they'll just say, well, just disable Windows Update altogether. And I guess, yeah, you could do that. I don't want to do that, though. I'm not a person who says or who thinks that there's no value to the Windows updates. I happen to think that there are. I happen to think that while it's not perfect, that a lot of times the updates that are delivered through Windows Update are actually really helpful to the computer, and they help make it more secure. They help it just run better, or they're just important for other reasons. So I'm in that camp. If you're not, if you just want a computer that never updates, then this probably isn't the tutorial for you. You know, you can go find that anywhere, how to disable or how to gut Windows Update. Who knows what the other consequences of that are, but okay, if you want to do that, go do that. What we're out to do is we want the updates, but we want them on our terms. We want the reboots to only happen when we want them to. I'm not sure if the microphone picked up that beeping there. Apologies for the brief interruption. I just had a brief power surge, and my UPS, apparently the battery, is due for replacement, so it was kind of bellyaching about that. Anyhow, that's actually a good point, because like I've set up battery backups on this computer, and I've taken all these measures. The building that I work in has a generator for when the power goes out for longer periods of time. So I've got all this stuff in place to keep my computer running when I need it to. And Windows will just decide to just have its own way and just reboot. So this is a solution to that. Now, first, let's look at some of the options. First of all, you may be familiar with this screen, the Windows Update screen. When it's in a position where it's ready to restart, this is what it's going to look like, and it'll say your device will restart outside of active hours. And there'll usually be sometimes there's a little pop-up in the lower right if you have notifications turned on, or a little icon. But basically, when you go into the Windows Update screen, this is what you're seeing. And it's inviting you, hey, you could restart now. Or you could schedule a restart. Okay? So that's all fine. And I guess if you wanted to just try to keep an eye out for this stuff and then schedule the reboots where it's out of your way, you could do that. But I was looking for a little bit more of a solution like what I described, which is, no, I want to choose when the reboots happen, period. every single time, no matter what. Well, there is no built-in functionality for that in Windows 11, not as of the date of this video. Now, you've got some options here. You'll see there's one here, get the latest updates as soon as they're available, and that's turned off. You would think that that would kind of, slow Windows updates roll. But when you read the fine print, it maybe doesn't do so much. It says, be among the first to get the latest non-security updates, fixes, and improvements as they roll out. So first of all, this feature, on or off, is about early access to updates. It's not turning off updates. It's just, do you want early access to them as soon as they're available? And secondly, it specifically says it's for non-security updates. The problem with that is, at any point, Microsoft could classify an update as security related, and it would bypass this feature altogether. So that's not the solution we're looking for. You do have an option to pause updates, but you could only do it for, let's say, a few weeks. And again, if you wanted to do that, you just set your calendar and remind yourself to go in, and every 4 or 5 weeks, go in and pause again. I have no confidence that there wouldn't reach a point where at some point Microsoft or Windows would consider it urgent enough that it's going to go ahead and just apply the update and restart anyway. Based on the other ways that this module seems to operate, wouldn't surprise me at all. So I don't feel like I can trust or rely upon that. And I don't want to have to go in every month and do that. It's just, I've got enough things to remember to do. Maybe you're the same. So then you've got advanced options. And here is where you can set different options related to which types of updates. There's a thing here for notify me when a restart is required. And I have that turned on because I want to know. I want to know when it's due. But that's all it does. I mean, frankly, to have that off just seems insane to me, that, okay, the computer is going to reboot whenever it wants to, and it's not going to notify you even? That's crazy. That means that it could do it right in the middle of you typing something important that you haven't saved yet, or recording something if you're doing audio or video or editing or whatever. No. So you at least want the notification, right? But that doesn't stop it. And then here's a key area, active hours. And if you remember back on the first Windows Update screen, right at the top here, it said your device will restart outside of active hours. Now, what are active hours? Active hours are a window that you can define during which you've kind of staked out, okay, the computer is, it should not be rebooted during this time. And to their credit, Microsoft, Windows Update does obey that. But here's the problem. You got an 18-hour limit on that active hours window. So at any point, if you set it, the active hour window to start right now, then it will hold off rebooting for the next 18 hours. But then at that point, when it's outside that active hours window, the other 6 hours minimum, it can reboot freely just like it wants to. So that's like getting warm, but it's not quite the solution that we're looking for. However, it is, the investigation of this is what led me to the solution that I'm going to outline for you. So, in summary, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a solution that is going to continually keep us within the active hours window. And as such, unless Microsoft changes something about the way Windows Update works, as long as it always thinks we're within the active hours window, it will not reboot. And I've tested and I've confirmed this. In fact, on this computer, this restart required, and it will do it outside of active hours. This has now been on my screen for 5 days. Normally, once it gets to this point, the next time it creeps outside the active hours window, it just reboots. No matter what's going on the computer, it just reboots. But But since I put this solution in and tested it, it has not rebooted. The system has stayed up. I've left stuff up overnight just for testing, just to make sure. And it doesn't. So I am free now I can restart the computer when I want to and apply the updates, which I will. In fact, I'm probably going to do that right after I finish recording this video, because I have no reason not to. So what we're going to do is we've got a scripting solution that we're going to implement that is going to keep us within the active hours window. All right. First, we're going to take a quick look at the registry, because that's where the magic happens with this. So to access the registry on Windows 11, easiest way, in my opinion, is hit the Start button and start typing regedit. The first result you're going to get is Registry Editor. It always pops up a little box to confirm, do you want to actually be in here? Because frankly, fiddling around in the registry when you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous. Okay? So the area that we're looking at, the registry key, where these settings are, is HKey local machine, then software, then Microsoft, and then under Microsoft you go almost all the way down to near the end of the alphabet, Windows Update. Under that, UX, and under that, Settings. So now you can see the list of keys that are in that section of the registry here. These keys here, active hours, start and end, right near the top, that is these values, what the actual active hours of the computer are at this time. And it shows 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. Okay, so from 10 in the morning all the way through past 10 p.m. and all the way around to 4 a.m. That's 18 hours, right? And that's the, well, actually, my script just ran. So, yeah, my script ran while this was going on. So hold on just a second. Because you'll notice here, active hours start and end are 11 to 5. The reason for that is because the script ran while I was talking. It runs at a specific time. So anyway, you can see here the keys for start and end active hours are 11 to 5, and here active hours 11 to 5. That's what those two keys represent. So what we are going to do is we are going to set up a script that we can run using the task scheduler in Windows that is going to automatically keep nudging this active hours window forward so that we're always within it. And as such, the computer won't automatically reboot. So let's take a look here. The first thing that we do is we create a batch file. Now the source code for these two script files, there's going to be links in the description of this video for them. So feel free to, copy paste or, at least get a closer look at them that way. Let's take a look at what this thing does. So basically, using some PowerShell stuff from the command line, this is a batch file. We named it disablereboot.bat. You can name it whatever you want to. And what it does is it uses a PowerShell command to get the current time and add 18 hours to it, and set the start hour to that value. So if right now, when I'm recording this video, right now it is, the hour is 5 o'clock p.m. So if this were to run right now, it's going to grab that 5 o'clock value, add 18 hours to it, which makes it 11, and that'll be the start hour. And for the end hour, it grabs the current hour, 5, adds 12 hours to it, meaning right now it's 5 p.m., so it would be 5 a.m., and sets that as the end hour. And if you notice here, that is, the last time it run, which was just a few minutes ago, that's exactly what it did set them to, 11 and 5, based on our current hour of 5 p.m. And then this second part of the script is where it just actually writes those into the registry. And you can actually see, it's in plain text if you want to analyze and check it. It's the same keys, the registry keys, that we saw in the registry editor for the active hours start and active hours end. And it just writes those values to it. That's the script. Now, when I went to put this into the Windows Task Scheduler, there were basically the part of it that bugged me doing it just as this batch file is that it popped up, whenever it ran the script, it popped up a little command prompt window, just very briefly, as is normal when a batch file is run. And it was doing that because this script is set to run every hour. So it was doing that every hour, and frankly, when I'm using the computer, that can actually get in the way of some things because it temporarily grabs focus, and I just didn't want that. Sometimes I'm doing screen capture on this computer, and so you don't want that popping up here. So how we get around that is this batch file is actually run by a second script, which is a VbScript file. And this script file, all it does is it runs, it points to and runs the batch file that we created there, but runs it with a command, a script command, that will do so without popping up any window. That's the whole purpose of this part. So what we did is we created a folder. I just created a folder on my C drive and named it Utils. You can put yours wherever you want to, as long as you know where it is. And I put the batch file that we showed you here and this VBS file both in there. Name them whatever you like. But these are the names that I did. DisableReboot.bat. And then that points, we point to that path here. And then DisableAutoReboots.vbs. And I just put them both in that folder on the C drive. Now we go over to the Task Scheduler. And let's see if we can get this to display in a nice way. So here's Disable Automatic Reboot. I'm going to open its properties. What you will want to do is right-click on Task Schedule Library here and choose Create Task. I would recommend using Create Task, not Create Basic Task. Create Task gives you a few more options during the creation process, which will be helpful to you. Okay, so what we did here is we set the script to run only when the user is logged on, which is fine. If I'm not logged in, then I don't care if the computer reboots. It's fine. So run only when the user is logged on. You don't have to set this to run with highest privileges. I experimented with that to see if that was necessary. It's not. But I think maybe it helps if the user that you're logged in with when you run this has local administrative rights on the computer. So if you're having trouble getting it to run, you might try saying run with the highest privileges. You could also try running it under the username system instead of your login. You can experiment with that if you're having permissions problems when you get it to run, when you're trying to get it to run. Those are the things that you can mess around with. Okay, so the trigger for this script is it's set to run on a schedule daily, and I just set a start time and for it to happen every day. But then down in the bottom in the advanced settings here, repeat the task every 1 hour for a duration of 1 day and make sure it's enabled. Okay, that's the trigger. That's basically the circumstances that it looks for under which it's going to run this command. Then under actions, that's where you define what it's supposed to do. And the action that we want is we want it to start a program. And the program that you want to run is a program called VbScript.exe. That is the That's basically a utility that runs VbScript files. And for most people, this is going to be the path to it. It's going to be in the Windows directory /system32 /wscript.exe. You could browse to that if you want to make sure. But this is the program that you want to run. And then you want to add an argument to it that basically is just the path to the VBS file. So that's what I've got here is c:/utils and then disableAutoReboots.vbs. That's the argument. And so what that will end up doing is putting all that, sending all of that as a command on the computer. Hey, invoke WScript and then, run this VBS file. And as we saw over here, what the VBS file does is it runs the batch file without opening up a command prompt window. Now, if you're more sophisticated with scripting than I've been here, then you could probably figure out a way to do all of this under one script file or one PowerShell thing or whatever. Feel free to experiment with that, with caution. But if you know what you're doing, there's probably some of you right now that are, shaking a fist at the screen that this could be done so much more efficiently. Fair game. I totally and freely admit that that's possible. I'm just showing you what worked. And then if you have a way to optimize this further or make it superior, leave a comment and let us know how you did that. Okay? That's all that you have to really set here. You don't have to really worry about conditions. They're going to default to the right thing. It's good to check them and make sure, but they're going to default to the right thing. And settings, same thing. And sometimes this allow task to be run on demand is not checked by default. And I'd recommend checking that because then it just makes it easier for you to test the scheduled task manually when you want to. Now, in the list of scheduled tasks on your computer, you'll find whatever you named your task. I recommend naming it something that, that you're going to know what it is. And once you've run it, there's going to be some statistics that show up here in terms of when's it set to run next, when's the last time that it ran, and what was the outcome, what was the result of the last time you ran it. And what you're wanting is the result to show up as the operation completed successfully, 0 by 0. That's what you want in the result. If you get some other kind of error, then that's going to need to be troubleshot, and it most likely has something to do with permissions. And that's all related to these security options on the general tab of the task. You may have to play with this. I'm running this as a user that has full administrative privileges on the computer, so I have no trouble executing it. But writing to the registry requires some privileges. So if your user doesn't have that, you may have to run it under a different user's context or under the system user or use the highest privileges. You may have to experiment with that a bit. But that is the most common reason why this script would fail. So the end result of that is once that runs every hour, it continues to bump this active hours window along so that we stay nestled right in the middle of it. So as you can see that right now I'm recording this video in the 5 o'clock p.m. hour. That is safely right in the middle of this 11 a.m. to 5 a.m. window. And it will keep nudging it along and keep it synchronized with the real time every hour. And so far, that has kept my computer from rebooting when I don't want it to, which was the objective. So I hope this proves helpful to you. Again, if you've got some tips on how to do this more efficiently, maybe with just one script file, or just some general suggestions or problems you're running into, drop us a comment. We'll try our best to answer them. And yeah, that's that. So have a great day. We'll see you next time.